Alright. Let's hope that this works. We are live. See if I have a lag. We do not. Perfect, alright. Gonna begin in 5, 4, 3, 2. What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you live from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut for the first time since December of 2022. And of course, today we are going to be looking at the 2023 NFL Draft. It's been a while since I've done a video live. Hopefully the Wi-Fi works. I did get new Wi-Fi recently, so fingers crossed. I'm simming, of course, the Chiefs versus Eagles, because why not? Breaks my heart that Kansas City won this game in real life, but maybe Madden Eagles will win back. I don't know. Regardless. So, of course, big moves in the NFL this offseason, but we're not here to really discuss all the big ones. We will, of course, mention Aaron Rodgers to the New York Jets, but I'm intending on doing another video some point soon to discuss the big moves. But Aaron Rodgers to the Jets, by far the biggest trade of this offseason. Absolutely insane. I shouldn't even say the biggest trade of this offseason, because we do have a trade for the #1 overall pick, but regardless, it's just been a pretty crazy offseason so far. And the draft, entering the draft yesterday, nobody really knew what to expect. We were all kind of thinking, all right, maybe this will happen, maybe that'll happen, but the draft was pretty much as chaotic as we thought it would be. So anyways, without further ado, we'll jump right in and we'll start with the first overall pick. Now, originally Chicago had held the first overall pick thanks to Houston winning a meaningless Week 18 game. So Chicago leapfrogged them at the end, taking that pick. And it's interesting. So they started shopping the pick because they felt we don't need the quarterbacks. They were happy with how Justin Fields had played last year when he was healthy. He had a slow start, but then he really took off. And he was looking pretty good. So they started shopping the pick, and Carolina offered them a big package of picks, which included, of course, the 9th overall pick, a 2024 first, a 2025 second, their second-round pick in this year's draft, and wide receiver DJ Moore to jump from 9 to 1. Chicago, of course, took this because Chicago felt that they were a couple players away from being a contender. So they said, all right, let's make this move. So what ends up happening, Carolina moves up, and they get their pick of the quarterbacks. Now, at first, people were thinking, all right, it's going to be C.J. Stroud, but then Bryce Young started making his name pop up, and Carolina was one of the worst-kept secrets, back in the 1980s, even pre-2000, I think it was 2007, the last CBA there, the big one, 2009, maybe. You would have seen Carolina just sign the player that they wanted, like you used to be able to do back in the day. I think it was 2010 actually, because I think it was Bradford that signed that massive deal. But anyways, so it became the worst kept secret in the NFL that the Carolina Panthers wanted Bryce Young, quarterback out of Alabama. So of course they picked him. Now, I'm not here to tell you I think that this is a great pick or I think that this is a bad pick, but I'm not the biggest fan of Bryce Young. The size of his body does scare me with the NFL. But hey, maybe I'll be wrong. I never wish bad luck on players. So hopefully he comes in and proves me right, especially since they have a former Eagle coordinator as their head coach in Carolina. So it's going to be intriguing to see what happens. But Bryce Young really won over Carolina, and that's what you want to do with your quarterback. But again, his size does scare me. But we'll see what happens with him. Now, his accolades are legendary, obviously. He has the Heisman. He won the national championship at one point. So, it's going to be interesting. Alabama doesn't have the best track record with quarterbacks that graduated from Alabama or were drafted from Alabama, I guess you could say. So, again, it's really going to be intriguing to see what happens. But, yes, he's going to need a lot of help to stay healthy, especially with Carolina trading DJ Moore to get him. I don't know how he's going to do. I think he's going to have a couple of rough years, but I do trust Carolina to eventually kind of build a core around him. It was a good pick. Again, not the pick I liked per se, but it was a good enough pick that he's gonna most likely be the starting quarterback of the Carolina Panthers for years to come, and that's what you really kind of want with your quarterback. Ideally for them, they want to have a situation where Bryce Young is their quarterback for the next 15 years, but we'll see. So that put Houston Texans on the clock with pick number 2, and this was a weird one because everyone really kind of thought Houston might make a big mistake. Now, they needed quarterback help, and that's pretty clear from the start. But there were rumors going around that Houston was going to pick a defensive lineman, specifically Willie Anderson, with the second overall pick. Now, everyone was kind of like, all right, this would be a huge mistake for you. I mean, don't get me wrong, Willie Anderson's a great player, but you need a quarterback. C.J. Stroud's on the board. Houston made the right move, and they went with C.J. Stroud. Now, I like him more than I like Bryce Young, and it could just be because of the play style, but I think he's got a better arm to me. He's got a bigger body, so he can take more hits at the NFL level. So we'll have to see what happens. I don't know if I necessarily trust Houston to develop him because Houston does not have the best track record when it comes to developing quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson is the exception, not the rule. I mean, Matt Schwab was probably the best one that they've had since, but they didn't develop him. They traded for him, I'm pretty sure, from Atlanta. But regardless, I mean, Houston they need a quarterback. So to get C.J. Stroud at this point was a great pick. And basically, it seems like the owner, Cal McNair, had stepped forward and he said, no, we're getting a quarterback because we need a quarterback. Quarterbacks sell tickets. So C.J. Stroud, hope for the future. Hope for the future. They've really needed a quarterback for years now, waiting on Deshaun Watson. You know, ever since Deshaun Watson kind of had that situation, and they really fell out with him. They've been desperately looking for a quarterback. And Houston, I mean, this is a step in the right direction. You have yourself in a good position now. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with C.J. Stroud. Now, with the third overall pick, this was an interesting one. So we're sitting here, and the Arizona Cardinals were on the clock. And we all kind of knew that they were shopping the pick because the pick was essentially whoever wants the best non-quarterback on the board. In a very surprising move, the Houston Texans traded up from 9. Right? Yes. I think it was 9. Anyways, no, it wasn't 9. They had traded up from 12. They traded up from 12 to 3. That's what it was. So they traded up from 12 to 3. So all of a sudden, Houston's back on the clock with their second pick in the top 3. Reminiscent of when the Vancouver Canucks did that back in the day with the Sedin twins. But what ends up happening is they're back on the clock, and D'Amico Ryans, their new head coach, who I'm very excited about, and if I'm a Texans fan, I'm pumped about D'Amico Ryans. Houston ends up saying, all right, we're going to get the best player that we thought was there. We're going to get the best defensive player. And they would draft linebacker Will Anderson Jr., of course, out of Alabama. Now, Will Anderson, he's a wrecking ball. The best way to put it. He's just an absolute force. I don't know if they're going to use him as a linebacker or as a defensive end or as an off-ball linebacker. I don't know what their plans are for him. But he's going to be a force. He's going to constantly be in the backfield. Probably the best pass rusher in the league this year, or in the draft this year. It's going to be extremely exciting to see him play. He has great speed, strength. His technique is amazing. He's just going to be very tough for opposing teams to handle. You're going to have to game plan around him. So for Houston to get him, they're pretty happy. D'Amico Ryans, to me, is going to work wonders with Will Anderson. This is a pick that Will Anderson arguably should have been the top pick in this draft. I think he should have been. But we, of course, live in a league where you need a good quarterback, so quarterbacks are always going to go early. But getting Will Anderson was just the right pick, and it's really going to work out for the Houston Texans. Now, with the fourth overall pick, we saw the Indianapolis Colts on the clock, and they had been connected to 2 quarterbacks. And they needed a quarterback. It was pretty clear. Sam Ehlinger wasn't working out. Matt Ryan was a bust. Carson Wentz was a bust. They had, I think, 5 starting quarterbacks in the past 5 years to open the year. And it was a new quarterback every year. It's not like it was you had 3 quarterbacks in 1 year and that skewed the stats. No. Ever since Andrew Luck surprisingly retired, they've been looking for a quarterback. So they decided to take a chance. There were 2 quarterbacks, and the one that was really standing out was Anthony Richardson out of Florida. Now, Richardson is a very, very compelling player. He has the definition, he is the definition of a high-risk, high-reward type of pick. He only started in 13 games in his collegiate career, but he flashed so much upside that Indianapolis said, all right, we don't care, we're going to pick him. And Richardson, to me, just looks like he's just a project. So most likely we're going to see Gardner Minshew, who they signed in free agency, as the quarterback in 2023, at least to start the year. But again, we saw this in 2016 with Carson Wentz. He was expected to be the backup project, need a year or two, but he stepped in as a rookie. Richardson definitely has that upside to step in as a rookie and play. He has a good arm. He has good legs, but there's just issues. There are, of course, issues for him. Either way, Richardson, the biggest risk of this draft, he has the potential to be like a Josh Allen, but that's really shooting for the stars. I think it's possible, but we'll have to see. I do trust Shane Steichen as the head coach of this team. He worked wonders with quarterbacks before. Look at Jalen Hurts, look at Justin Herbert. So we shall see what happens with him. Now, with the 5th pick, originally belonging to the Denver Broncos, they traded this pick to the Seattle Seahawks in the Russell Wilson trade. So Seattle, of course, surprisingly made the playoffs in 2022. And while they didn't win in the playoffs, they made the playoffs. Nobody saw this, and Geno Smith signed an extension to stay with the team. So they're on the clock, and they made a bold move, to an extent, a bold move, by drafting Devin Witherspoon, cornerback out of Illinois. Now, Witherspoon got to be one of the fastest risers in the NFL draft. He's been really just flying up draft boards in recent weeks. So when I saw the pick originally, I remember when he was getting mocked around the 20 to 25 range, with some having him slide down to the Eagles at 30. So to see him go at 5, I was very surprised. But at the same time, I wasn't, because I knew that his stock was soaring. So Witherspoon, he has the potential to just step in and be another key piece in the potential future Legion of Boom, because that's what it looks like Seattle's trying to build. And that would be great for them. Not good for the rest of the league. Witherspoon, of course, the level of competition that he played might not be the best, so who really knows what's going to happen. But Witherspoon has the tools, and I mean, opposing quarterbacks in college could not throw the ball against him. So anyways, with the 6th overall pick, this was a fun one that was actually traded. Originally, this belonged to the LA Rams. Now, the Rams traded it to the Detroit Lions in the Matthew Stafford trade. So Detroit has this pick, and they're kind of openly shopping the pick. So the Arizona Cardinals, who again had the 3rd pick, decided to make a move, and they traded up. Now, they had the 3rd pick, and they traded down to 12 with Houston. So now with they offered the 12th pick along with their 34th and another pick to Detroit to move up to 6. And, of course, Detroit accepts. So Arizona finally decides to get some offensive line help to help Kyler Murray out, who, of course, they had signed an extension with not too long ago. And they grab Paris Johnson Jr., the offensive tackle out of Ohio State. Now, he's another guy who had kind of risen up draft boards recently, but he's always been considered one of the best tackles. Now he's just the definitive best tackle of the draft class. So pretty excited for him. He definitely, to me, he's going to be the type of player. He's not going to sell tickets for the Cardinals because he's an offensive lineman, but he's going to be the type of guy that keeps this team in games. He has the ability to just play. He's got that, I hate to say this for teams that aren't the Eagles, but he has that dog mentality in him that really strikes me as the type of player that's going to be an impact player for years to come. I'm never going to say Hall of Famer, but especially for someone who was just drafted, but he has that upside because he's such a strong player. So we shall see. I love Paris Johnson Jr. I don't like that he went to Ohio State. Go Blue, go Northwestern too. But hey, you got to support him. You got to hope he has a good career. Arizona, I think you got your future tackle for the next 10 plus years. Now with the 7th pick, the Las Vegas Raiders were on the clock. There were a lot of questions with which direction they would go, and they went with one that we kind of saw coming, but at the same time, it was considered a bit of a maybe they'd go for Will Levis, quarterback out of Kentucky, who was sliding at this point, a little bit sliding. but they went with a defensive end named Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech. The right pick to make. I mean, they need defensive help. Chandler Jones has a huge cap hit next season, so they could probably just ideally have Chandler Jones teach Wilson for a year and then get rid of him. So, I mean, it's just a move for the future. The Raiders, the Raiders are the Raiders. They obviously don't have the best draft record, but Tyree Wilson, he has a lot of raw tools, a lot of raw upside. I think that he has the potential to be a bit of a stud. I do think that it was the right pick for the Raiders. For once, they didn't make a wrong pick. Their pass rush has been inconsistent, but to pair Tyree Wilson with Max Crosby, that's just going to be elite for the Raiders, assuming they don't mess it up. But this is big. This is big for them. It's a smart pick. He'll line up wherever he needs to go. And again, I think he's just the perfect replacement for Chandler Jones. So, next, we have the Atlanta Falcons on the board with the 8th pick, and they made a selection that I wasn't exactly excited about when they would grab running back Bijan Robinson out of Texas. Now, Robinson is arguably one of the best players in this draft. However, the Atlanta Falcons are not a player away from competing. Yes, they have a run first, run heavy offense. That's known. I mean, they don't really have a big name receiver anymore. Their quarterback likes to run the ball. To me, they're trying to build themselves to be the next Baltimore Ravens. They want to try to be in that situation. But when you're picking 8th overall, you shouldn't be targeting a running back in 2023. Now, don't get me wrong. Robinson is basically, he has the upside to be a slot receiver. So he can do that. He has the potential to be one. He could be like Christian McCaffrey, where he's going to catch the ball a lot and just get the yards after contact. He's such a good player. But there were so many other needs that Atlanta had that I didn't think they should have gone with running back Bijan Robinson. Still, it's a great pick. I think Robinson's going to be a great running back. The problem, though, is they're not a running back away from being contenders. So, still, good pick by them. Just to me, it wasn't worth the 8th overall pick for a team like Atlanta. So now we have the 9th overall pick. Now, this pick originally belonged to the Carolina Panthers, but they had traded it to move up to the number 1 pick to the Chicago Bears. Now, right when during the draft, another trade happened after the pick of Bijan Robinson was announced, where the Eagles moved up from 10 to 9, trading a future 4th-round pick to get the 9th overall selection to Chicago. Now, the Eagles made a bold move when they would grab defensive tackle Jalen Carter out of Georgia. Now, obviously, you guys know I'm an Eagles fan, so I want to talk about this pick, but I'm going to kind of limit myself here. But Jalen Carter has the upside of being the best, arguably the best player in the draft. Like, he has that upside. He's arguably better than everyone else in this draft. Will Anderson, probably the only other player that really compares with him. But we're talking about on-field production. You watch his tape, and you're shocked that he didn't go top 3, top 2, the 1st overall pick. However, we all know the situation off the field. I don't want to get into the details with him, but he does have a couple instances with him off the field, mostly when he's behind the wheel of a car. So there was an incident, of course, after they had won the championship game this past year, where he was involved in a speed racing incident, but off-field concerns, and there's some maturity issues with him. It's a huge gamble for Philadelphia. I don't know if it's going to pan out, but we shall see. Jalen Carter, to me, he's a type of player that's either going to win be like a potential MVP type of player and take over for Fletcher Cox, be the next defensive tackle for a decade in Philadelphia, or he's going to wind up in a situation where he is out of the league by 2027 because of off-the-field concerns. We shall see. I hope the pick works out. I know a lot of Eagles fans are a lot more excited than I am, but hey, I'm a bit more of a pessimist, so to speak. Now, with the 10th pick, Chicago would stand pat. This pick originally belonged to New Orleans, the Saints, but they traded it to Philadelphia last year in a random big pick swap that saw the Saints get 16 and 19 for 18 this pick and a future second, along with a couple other lesser picks being traded, but not going to get into that. And then, of course, Philadelphia traded to Chicago to move up to 9. So with the 10th overall pick, the Bears would select offensive tackle Darnell Wright out of Tennessee. This is just a pick that Chicago needs help with their offensive line. You have a quarterback in Justin Fields that's very good, but of course he suffered an injury last year, so there's concerns with the injury. Who knows how long, if he's going to be healthy. He should be, but you just want to protect him. You want to keep your quarterback healthy. You want to keep your quarterback of the future healthy. So Darnell Wright, another guy who, he's a big body, and I think he's got a lot of upside. He's going to be a tackle of the future. He's not Paris Johnson, but he's going to be a good player for the Chicago Bears. I like the pick. Now with the 11th pick, the Tennessee Titans, who were coming off of a big disappointing season, decided to grab the other top offensive lineman of the draft with Peter Skoronski. Now, Skoronski's a very, very highly regarded, talented offensive lineman. He's most likely going to be playing guard early in his career, but he could slide into a tackle position. Now that Taylor Lewan's gone in Tennessee, he could very well slide in as that left tackle. His grandfather, of course, if you watched the draft, you heard all the stories about his grandfather. His grandfather was a key piece in Green Bay back in the day. So it's going to be exciting to see how he does. He's the player who I wanted the Eagles to pick, but I kind of wasn't expecting them to. He's a very talented player, very smart player, has the intangibles. He has the potential to be a very good tackle for years to come. And it seems like I love all of these offensive linemen, and I do. I did my research on them. I like all of these guys, but he was my favorite of the draft. Of course, I knew Paris Johnson was going to be picked earlier. Paris Johnson, really, I kind of fell in love with him as time went on as a player, but he's a good player. I like Skoronski a lot. Now, with the 12th pick, this is a really fun one. So this pick 12 was traded 3 times. Now, this was originally the Cleveland Browns pick, but they traded it to Houston in the Deshaun Watson trade. So with Deshaun Watson out of the way, that trade's taken care of. Houston gets the pick. They trade it to Arizona as part of moving back up to pick 3 to get Will Anderson. So then Arizona ends up trading it to the Detroit Lions to trade up again to the 6th pick. So this pick's been traded around. Detroit stands pat, and they grab a running back, Jahmyr Gibbs, out of Alabama, which the second they made that pick, I just couldn't understand it. I'm going to limit myself here, but you've got DeAndre Swift. Swift is a great player. Obviously, it's pretty clear at this point in time that Detroit is just done with him. They don't want him there anymore. There were some questions with him and the Lions coaching staff, so evidently that's true. Swift, of course, had an injury-prone year last season, so the pick doesn't make sense to me. You're an NFL team that you were not a running back away from becoming Super Bowl contenders, and don't get me wrong, they're a very good team, but what are you going to do with DeAndre Swift now? Swift's going to walk as a free agent very soon, evidently. I just don't see the point in drafting Gibbs this early, especially since this is a player who's expected to go maybe at the end of the first round. You probably could have traded back one more time to get him. Now, with the 13th pick, this pick originally belonged to the New York Jets, and this pick was traded to the Green Bay Packers as part of the Aaron Rodgers trade. Now, Green Bay's on the clock, and they'll grab defensive end Lucas Van Ness out of Iowa. Great pick. Van Ness, of course, spent most of his career in college as a backup, but when he played, he was a very good, very talented, very productive pass rusher. He has a lot of upside. The Eagles were heavily tied to him, so I did a lot of research on him. He's got a lot of upside. He's got a relentless motor. He's raw, but he has the upside to just kind of blow it away and tell you, what do you mean I'm raw? I'm a great player. He's going to be a stud if he can stay healthy, if he can prove that he's not raw, if he can use that raw talent that he has, I should say, and become a star. Lucas Van Ness is going to be a great pass rusher. Maybe Clay Matthews will be back in place without the hair. It's possible. But you know Green Bay, they need pass rush help. To bring him on board, pair him with your first round pick last year, there's potential. There's a lot of potential in Green Bay. They're clearly looking at a rebuild now. So this could be a quick rebuild. I do trust Green Bay's management to do this. Now with the 14th pick, we saw New England was on the clock, but they traded this pick to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now Pittsburgh moved up and they'd grab another offensive tackle, this time Broderick Jones out of Georgia. Broderick Jones is another offensive lineman who I really liked. Big guy, big body. He's going to be a rock. He's going to be very tough to work against, go up against him. Just, I don't know if he should have been traded up for, but at the same time, Kenny Pickett needs help. He had suffered, of course, an injury last year, and teams are trying to build through the draft. That's what good teams do. You build through the trenches in the draft if you're a good team. Pittsburgh, of course, is a very good historic franchise. They know how to build through the draft. So this is a team, they made the right move to me. A very big guy. He's got the speed. He's got the physical gifts. I mean, so good. The problem is, of course, he's a little raw. He's only had 19 starts in his collegiate career. So we don't know how he's going to do long term, but he's got the upside. Now, with the 15th pick, the New York Jets were on the clock. This is a pick that they had gotten back from Green Bay in the Aaron Rodgers trade. So they would grab defensive end Will McDonald IV out of Iowa State. This was a pick that I wasn't exactly excited about him. He's got great athleticism. He's gonna be a good pass rusher, but I just don't think he's a good fit with the New York Jets. I didn't understand the pick. I was kind of scratching my head when they announced it. I'm like, what? Why? Okay. He's got upside, but I just don't necessarily think he was the right pick for the New York Jets. Prove me wrong. Just don't get a strip sack against the Eagles this year. Just don't do anything against the Eagles this year when they inevitably play you. But I think I would have personally, if you wanted a pass rusher, I would have gone with Nolan Smith. That's me. There's other pass rushers I would have gone with, especially over McDonald. I just think you could have traded back and got him. Now with the 16th pick, the Washington Commanders were on the board, and they made another pick I wasn't exactly thrilled with, but they clearly needed help in the cornerback position. I mean, you look at the NFC East, Dallas, Philadelphia, and New York all have very talented offenses. Dallas and Philadelphia have some of the best receiving cores in the NFL. New York has a ton of players that can play receiver. They are a little raw, but I think that New York also they're going to take a big step forward this year with their receivers. So Washington said, all right, we're going to go with a player that can play corner, and they grabbed corner Emmanuel Forbes out of Mississippi State. Now, I missed this pick. I had to be away from the TV when they announced it, but Forbes was a bit of an intriguing pick. I don't know why you would pick him over the player who went next overall, but I mean, he does have good ball skills. I'll give him that. He's a bit better in zone coverage than most of these prospects were, but there's just other players. Even Joey Porter Jr., you could have made a case for him over Forbes. I mean, we'll have to see what happens. There's a potential that he's a good player. I do think he'll be good enough. I just don't know if he was worth this early of a pick. Now, of course, now we go to the 17th overall selection. This was originally Pittsburgh, but they traded it to New England to move up to 14. So with the 17th overall selection, New England would grab cornerback Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon. Love this pick. Gonzalez was a borderline top 10 pick. So to grab him at 17 and trade down to get him, just an amazing pick for New England. I hate to say that, but hey, New England, give you credit where credit's due. You know what you're doing. It was just a great pick for the team. So Christian Gonzalez, to me, has the makings of a potential elite shutdown corner. It's going to be tough to go up against the Patriots defense now. Just really crazy. Really crazy. He was tied to the Raiders at 7. He was tied to the Eagles at 10. It's surprising. It's very surprising. He's not polished per se. He's still a little rough, so he's going to have probably a very rough rookie season. But at the same time, he's an impact player. Bill Belichick has to be pretty happy. Now with the 18th pick, the Detroit Lions were on the clock, and they made a selection that would have been so much more applauded a decade ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when they grabbed linebacker Jack Campbell out of Iowa. Now, Campbell is an old school player, has grit, effort. He's a great sideline-to-sideline linebacker. He can help a bit with the pass rush, but the problem is, in the passing game, when he's out there, he's going to get beat up a bit. He can help with the run, but he's going to get beat up in the pass. Now, he had a very good showing at the Combine, but it's just a pick that I was a little confused about. I didn't exactly know what they were going for when they picked Jack Campbell, but it's not like they reached big time. Campbell, I think you probably could have traded back later in the first and gotten him, but it's the right pick. If you feel that he's the way to go for him. There's a reason that these guys and girls work in the NFL, and I'm just here as a fan. So we'll see what happens. Now, with the 19th pick, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were on the clock, and there were a lot of questions with where they would go. Obviously, Tom Brady had retired. You had seen a bunch of players leaving free agency. There was, of course, the whole Devin White requesting a trade. So nobody really knew where they were going to go. But they went with a defensive tackle out of Pittsburgh named Calijah Kancey. This player, Kancey, was not expected to go in the first round. However, they made a move, and he's just your prototypical defensive tackle that's probably going to be a great run stuffer. That might not be a great run stuffer, I should say, but should be a great pass rusher if he can develop. He had amazing speed in the drills. He looked great running the 40-yard dash. He looked great with the 10-yard split. But other than that, his physical attributes just didn't necessarily pan out. Now, it's going to be interesting. He's clearly an athletic freak, so who knows what's going to happen. He has the upside. A lot of people are saying, oh, he could be the next Aaron Donald. That's obviously a huge comparison, but just the pass rush is there. He's going to be a good pass rusher. The run defense is where he has his faults. I'm excited to see what he does, but easier said than done for him to continue to develop for the Buccaneers. It's going to be good for him. It's going to be exciting for him. Now, we get to the 20th pick, and this saw the Seattle Seahawks on the clock, and Seattle had already made a selection, getting Devin Witherspoon at the 5th overall selection. Now, this was their pick, and they would grab wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba out of Ohio State. He is the best receiver in this draft class. I'm surprised that he lasted all the way to pick 20, but Seattle eagerly picked him. I could just imagine Pete Carroll running to call the commissioner and saying, we know who we want. We know who we're picking. And Smith-Njigba is a very talented player out of Ohio State again. Arguably could have gone in the top 10, and it wouldn't have been too surprising. He's got the tools. The problem for him, he slid a little bit because he was injured last year, but he's just such a good player that putting him in the slot is going to be terrifying. Terrifying for opposing offenses. You got to go up against DK and him and Tyler Lockett. Who are you going to guard? What are you going to do? Great pick. I absolutely love this pick for them. Now, originally we had the 21st pick belonging to the Miami Dolphins. However, they had to forfeit this selection due to tampering charges when they talked to Tom Brady and when they were talking to Tom Brady and Sean Payton. Both of them, they were still under roster. They were still under ownership for other teams. They just violated the anti-tampering rule, so Miami had to forfeit their first-round pick along with a third-round pick next year. So, big loss for the Dolphins here. Now, with the new 21st overall selection, the Los Angeles Chargers would select wide receiver Quentin Johnston out of TCU. I'm getting flashbacks here, seeing a TCU wide receiver go 21st overall. Moment of silence for me and my fellow Eagles fans with that one. But anyways, Quentin Johnston, not just because he's a wide receiver that went 21st overall out of TCU, I just don't like this pick. He's got a lot of talent, and I do think that Los Angeles needed a receiver with this pick, but I would have gone another direction. I'm just not the biggest fan of him. He's got talent. He has the speed. He has the big body. He has the potential to be the next Mike Williams, but I just think he's raw. He's going to need some time, and Los Angeles is in a win-now mode. You need to be able to play today, and he has a lot of issues, specifically with his drops. So I don't necessarily like this pick for the Chargers. Especially I would have gone Jordan Addison, that's me. But, I mean, it is what it is. Maybe he can develop. He's just a bit raw to me. Now, with the 22nd pick, the Baltimore Ravens were on the clock. Now, Baltimore, of course, before the draft, made a big move by extending quarterback Lamar Jackson. So this was a big move for them. And clearly, in the draft, they said, all right, we need to get Lamar a new player, a new person to have on his side. So they would grab wide receiver Zay Flowers out of Boston College. Zay Flowers is a good player. I do like his potential upside, of course. Playing at Boston College, I saw a little bit of his games at times here in Connecticut, because Boston, we get a lot of Boston, we get a lot of New York stuff. So he's got speed, he's got the burst, he's got the elusiveness. The big thing for me with Zay Flowers is he's a bit undersized at 5'9", 5'9", but he's tough. He can take hits, and having him, Rashad Bateman, Odell Beckham Jr., all on this team, Mark Andrews still there. They're trying to build a passing game for Lamar Jackson, and if they can have an actual passing game here, they're going to be that much better, because you'll have to protect against the pass, not just the run. Zay Flowers has the upside. I just don't know if he's going to pan out long term, just because of his size, but he definitely has the potential. Now, with the 23rd overall pick, the Minnesota Vikings were on the clock, and they would grab wide receiver Jordan Addison out of USC. Now, this is one that Minnesota was kind of all over the place. We didn't know who he would be going for, where he would be going, but he's a very good route runner. He can catch passes all the time. To me, like I said, I think he was the second best receiver in this draft class. So I just really like what Addison has the potential to be. Minnesota, obviously, Adam Thielen's gone. You got rid of him. So now you're bringing in Addison to kind of step up and play alongside Justin Jefferson. So there's a heck of a lot of upside for this team, for this player. Addison, I really like him. He was the nation's best receiver in 2021. So they have that going in college, I should say. So if that going for him. I really like this pick from the Minnesota Vikings. I can't believe he was on the board still, and it was clear at this point that the run of receivers had happened, as we had 4 straight picks be wide receivers, finally. Now, Jacksonville Jaguars originally held the 24th overall selection, but they would trade it to the New York Giants. They traded down one spot, or the Giants, I should say, traded up one spot. So New York would end up grabbing cornerback, who has the potential to play safety, but it's most likely going to be a slot corner, Deonte Banks out of Maryland. Banks is another player who I like him. He's a great fit for the New York Giants. He excels in man coverage, although he does have some issues at times where he gets beat early. He needs to kind of loosen his hips, his technique with his hips. But he's just, again, like I said with Washington, there's a lot of talented pass catchers in the NFC East. I mean, not including the Giants. Now you have Terry McLaurin to worry about with Washington. So bringing in Banks, he's going to be a great player. He's probably a safe pick. He's probably not going to have the highest upside, but he's probably going to have one of the lowest floors for corners in the league. So there's that. Deonte Banks, I love that pick for the Giants. I hate that it's the Giants getting a good pick, but it was the right pick to make for the New York Giants. So anyways, now 25th overall. This pick originally belonged to New York, but they traded to Jacksonville. Now, Jacksonville would again trade down with the Buffalo Bills, who moved up from 27 to 25, jumping the Dallas Cowboys to select tight end Dalton Kincaid out of Utah. Loved that trade because I know it's sniped to the Dallas Cowboys. Very happy that Kincaid is not going to Dallas. I think Kincaid's going to be a stud, so I'd much rather see him play in Buffalo. Of course, being an NFC fan, Buffalo, you Bills fans needed a talented tight end to bring in Dalton Kincaid. Great move by the team. Loved this selection. He's kind of going to be, to me, the next like Mike Gesicki to an extent. He's not a pure tight end. He's more of a pass catcher. You could say Travis Kelce, but Kelce is a better blocker. So Kincaid, this is a player that the Bills needed, and they got him. Great pick for the Buffalo Bills. Good value. Love the pick. Now, with the 26th overall selection, the Dallas Cowboys were on the clock, and they would grab defensive tackle Mazi Smith out of Michigan. Now, Smith is an unheralded player. He's a run-stuffing defensive tackle. You know, you look at these run-stuffing DTs, and they never get the praise that they should be getting. I mean, you can name so many run-stuffing defensive tackles, and so many people won't know them unless you're a fan of the team. Like, I can tell you, one of the best run-stuffing defensive tackles in the mid to late 2010s was Bo Allen of the Eagles, and a lot of people might not know who Bo Allen was, or is. He's retired, and he was a very good player for the Eagles. He was good with the Buccaneers for a bit. He struggled with the Patriots, but he was just such a good player. Cedric Thornton was another one who was great at stopping the run. Now, I'm just using the Eagles, 2 examples from the Eagles there. But these players don't get credit because if you're not recording sacks anymore, players don't care. Fans don't care about you. They're like, oh, cool, you got 2 tackles on the game, but how many were sacks? 0. How many times did you get to the quarterback? 0. So, I mean, to me, he's got the upside to be like a Jordan Davis type of player, again, sticking with the Eagles. I do like Smith. He's a good pickup for the Dallas Cowboys. He's going to help their run defense, but I don't know if he was the right pick at 26. I do think he was for the Cowboys. They need help with the run defense. I mean, Philadelphia and New York, Giants, 2 teams in your division, have very mobile quarterbacks that like to run the ball. Of course, they have designed runs with Jalen Hurts and Daniel Jones, respectfully. They have good running games, so bringing in Smith just makes sense. Now, at the 27th pick, this was originally the Buffalo Bills, but they traded to the Jaguars. Jacksonville stays on the clock for the first time, making their pick, grabbing offensive tackle Anton Harrison out of Oklahoma. Harrison, good player, but not great player to me. I mean, it's not a reach. It's just probably not the player I would have gone with. Cam Robinson, of course, news came out earlier in the day that he was going to be suspended for a PED suspension. So Harrison should be able to start right away. Who knows if Robinson's going to stay with the team long term. They might be done with him. Trevor Lawrence needs to be protected. So getting a good offensive tackle was the right move for the team. Just, again, I don't know if I would have gone Harrison at this point. But hey, the way I view it, you traded down twice. You're still getting your guy. Good move for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, at the 28th overall pick, the Cincinnati Bengals were on the clock, and they would grab defensive end Myles Murphy out of Clemson, the first of 2 Clemson defensive linemen to go in this first round. And Myles Murphy has a lot of burst. He has a lot of upside as a player, as a pass rusher. He's going to be one of those players to kind of help get the pass rush going. Cincinnati, we've seen it before. Their pass rush needed help. Trey Hendrickson has been a great pickup for them, but I mean, you need more than just 1, maybe 2 good pass rushers to be a successful team. Just a very strong player, very quick hands. He's going to have the high motor. He's going to continue to grow. He's going to get a lot of sacks. He's going to be a good pick for the Cincinnati Bengals for years to come. They're going to be enjoying this pick for a long time. Now, at the 29th overall selection, the New Orleans Saints were on the clock here. Now, originally, this was the San Francisco 49ers pick, but they traded to the Miami Dolphins in a draft pick trade back in 2021 that saw them net Trey Lance. Now, Miami would trade this selection to the Denver Broncos in exchange for Bradley Chubb at the trade deadline this year. And then Denver traded to New Orleans for Sean Payton, the rights to hire Sean Payton. So the pick had been traded 3 times, New Orleans on the clock, and they would grab defensive tackle Brian Bresee out of Clemson. And Breese's got a great backstory. He's going to be a player it's hard to root against him. Everyone's rooting for him. He's a very good, very talented player, and it's going to be very exciting to see him continue to grow in the NFL. He's going to be most likely going to be a great player. So it's going to be exciting to see him. He's going to help with the run defense. So they needed help for that defensive line, specifically the defensive tackle position. Just a great pick for the New Orleans Saints. Now with the 30th pick, the Philadelphia Eagles were on the clock here. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, all right, Eagles, you got 2 moves to make. You can trade down or you can pick one player that I really want. And they said, all right, we're going to stay pat. And they would grab linebacker, technically defensive end, so to speak, however you want to look at him, Nolan Smith out of Georgia, their second pick of the draft, and they went with a second defensive player from Georgia. So just Nolan Smith, high upside as a pass rusher. Loved this pick. I was so happy when the announcer, Roger Goodell, said Nolan Smith, or I actually it was Donna Kels that said it. When Donna Kels goes Nolan Smith, I went, yes, let's go. I almost jumped up. I was so excited for that pickup. Nolan Smith, to me, the Eagles were mocked to look at him at pick 10, so to get him at pick 30, the fact that he slid this far, I mean, he already knows 3 guys in this defensive unit. Jordan Davis, of course, Jalen Carter, and Nakobe Dean, all here from Georgia. So to bring in Nolan Smith as well, just huge pickup. Of course, he dealt with a torn pectoral muscle that cost him some time last season, but he's a very good, very high upside player. Now with the last pick, we saw the Kansas City Chiefs grab another edge rusher in Felix Anudike Uzuma, and local guy, went to Kansas State. Good pick. He's a very good pass rusher. He's a pure pass rusher. Now, this is a great pick for Kansas City. He's going to help them. He's going to step up. Frank Clark's probably not going to be around with the team much longer. So to get another pass rusher who probably can be there for a decade, good pick by Kansas City. But that's it for the draft. We had some pretty exciting days for the draft. We had a very exciting day for the draft. So it's exciting to see all these players' dreams come true getting drafted. There were some surprises, of course, during the draft, but all said and done, it was a good day. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was my recap of the 2023 NFL Draft first round. Have a good rest of your day. It was nice to be back, that's for sure. Miss talking.